know shit.
And here we are with the definition of a powerful young entrepreneur. Take life by the balls, do what you want to do, and live it how you want to live it. I got mucho respect for my guest today, Miss Jacki SugarVixen. Do you want club soda with that?
Sure, I'll take club soda.
What are we drinking today? Here you go.
We're drinking fucking tequila, mate.
Woo-wee. I'm going to go with the vodka today. It's a vodka kind of day today for me.
That's fair.
Yeah. So, welcome to K-Man Don't Know Shit. And I usually start off by talking a little bit about how I know somebody.
Sure.
And just because it seems it kind of happened naturally that all my guests end up being people that I've done things with. And I've done something with you. I met you through a friend of a friend. And you were in a video that we made called Space Thriller off of one of our albums. And videos on YouTube if anybody wants to check out Miss Jacki. And Jacki, today I'm going to learn some stuff.
Absolutely.
And the reason it's called K-Man Don't Know Shit is because I realize there's all kinds of shit that I don't know. And today we're going to talk about burlesque. You've been involved in burlesque and you're well known in the scene. I know this and don't deny it. First of all, let's start with what is your definition of what is burlesque? Because a lot of people might have different views on what it is.
Absolutely. So to me, burlesque is...
Cheers, by the way.
Cheers,
yes.
mate.
Let's start with cheers.
Fucking
yes.
happy holidays.
Right? Yeah, man.
To me, burlesque is like a very theatrical, dramatic form of striptease.
Okay.
The art of striptease, if you will. It's kind of like live theater, performance art. It encompasses a storyline, dance, music, sometimes singing, a lot of acting, portraying of different characters and storylines in a live presentation that is unparalleled to any other type of performance that I could really think of. Mm-hmm. It's really, really special, and you have like the freedom and power to do whatever you want essentially on stage. You can convey messages that are political, or you could be subverting traditional tropes surrounding gender or sexuality that exists in society.
Like, do you know much about like the history of burlesque? Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
it seems to me like, you know, you see cowboy movies and they might have burlesque in it. For a lot of people,
Yeah.
I think they go, you know, back to those days, but I even have a feeling it might even go farther than that.
Absolutely. So like when you think of the golden era of burlesque, it started back in the 1920s and really went on until like the 1960s, even 1970s. 1980s, there was a little bit of a decline. Mm-hmm. And then...
is that when it shifted more strippers?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people speculate that the decline in burlesque was because of television.
Right.
Because burlesque was traditionally for working class folks. It was like affordable mode of entertainment.
Right.
With the television, that's less people going out to shows, right? Mm-hmm. So, and also like some people speculate that like second wave feminism and their like anti-pornography, women aren't sexual beings, kind of mantra kind of also led to that decline,
okay.
Which is like utterly ridiculous when you think about it today, because like, you know, third wave feminism is more about intersectional issues. So like issues of sexuality, gender, race, social justice, disability, all those like issues coming more at the forefront.
Right.
So it's not just like white, cis, heterosexual female women being at the forefront, which was very much second wave, right? Mm-hmm. It's now like, I would even argue that we're in fourth wave, where it's like, no, like we celebrate like sex workers, we celebrate transgender folk. Like it's not
that was
just,
actually
like,
one of my questions for you. Is like,
Yeah.
Is it considered sex work?
Burlesque, no.
Okay.
Some people kind of have it skewed because it's like, well, if burlesque is stripping and stripping is sex work, therefore it is sex work. But that's absolutely not the case. Mm-hmm. Because there is still, like sex work involves like a transaction. So like stripping, for example, is sex work, because there's a transaction that is happening.
Like a personal transaction, one-on-one.
Exactly.
Right.
And there is a trade of like sexual services that are being engaged in, right?
Okay.
Burlesque, it's like still very much like it's a performance. It's a mode of entertainment that does encompass sexuality.
Right.
So there's a difference there, right? But yeah, so where was I with all of this?
Well, we're talking about the history a
Yes,
bit,
the
and already
history.
like you're bombarding. I'm getting all these facts because, I tend to think burlesque tends to incorporate, a lot of performance art, right? That's kind of my very basic view on
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? And because we're talking, like you said, you can express yourself, whether it's political views, even dancing, singing, or a storyline. But like each performance is quite short, if I'm not mistaken. Like the length of a song, would you say?
Yeah,
Or-
but that wasn't always the case. So
Okay.
back in the golden era, a given set, a performer would be on stage for like 10 to 20 minutes.
Oh, really?
So it was like very long form and like very much about like parading around on stage. I would argue that it was still like adhering to the male gaze because, as I said before, like it was like a mode of entertainment for working class folk.
Right.
So like, Minsky Theater in New York and like back in the 20s, like that is like a very like primal kind of example of like golden era burlesque. Neo-burlesque, which started in the 90s.
What is neo-burlesque?
So that's like the burlesque revival, because remember
Okay.
I talked about like the decline, so
Yeah,
it got
in the 80s,
revived.
yeah.
Yeah. So in the 90s in New York, there was this movement of like burlesque revival, which is now referred to as neo-burlesque, and that's still what we engage with today. So everything that happens now is still like considered neo-burlesque, though a lot of performers, the way that they perform is in a very traditional sense, like
Right.
the huge costumes, the glamour, the opulence.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to play between like old burlesque and like neo-burlesque, where I can like look like a beautiful lady on stage, but like I'm also, there's like hidden messages of like, no, like screw gender norms and like screw like the way that I'm supposed to look in this world. Like I'm actually just like portraying my own kind of sexual freedom and liberation on stage, because like I fucking need a way to like exist in this world without being so
Absolutely.
angry every
Yeah.
day,
I mean, wouldn't you say that's, one of the reasons a lot of artists, just do art in general.
Exactly.
It's like to, either escape or, feel that need of, saying something, no matter what it is. But I think anytime somebody gets on stage and people are seeing something, they are automatically saying something. Even if it's
Absolutely.
nothing, they're still saying something.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's absolutely like a mode of creative self-expression, and I feel like very thankful that I have this outlet, because I trained as a dancer for a huge part of my life.
Oh,
Kind
really?
of fell out of love with it. I was like an angsty teenager, like just listening to punk rock, getting tats, and then like obviously I couldn't do dance training anymore because that's not conducive to that kind of like strict catty like competitive lifestyle.
Right,
And
right.
then when I was going to school at Dawson College, I actually met a burlesque performer / like sex columnist / sex worker and sex worker rights activist, and like just like this embodiment of like everything that I like wanted to be in my life, just like a fucking powerhouse,
That's cool that you mentioned that, because one of my first questions was going to be like, what was your introduction? Like, where did you first hear that this existed?
It was in a fucking Dawson College.
Get an education,
new
yeah.
new school humanities course.
Right.
Yeah, so just like wild. So I met her and I was just like, fuck, how do I do this? And she was just like, well, you should, reach out to troops in Montreal, see how you can get involved, like maybe do some stage managing work. And that's exactly what I did. So I kind of just like spent a year going to shows, and like I was young, like I was 18 for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And then like sure enough,
In Montreal, is that considered like the line of legality?
yeah.
I say Montreal because I have a feeling it's probably not the same everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, well, in the US, for example, like you can still get on a stage when you're 18, like in like venues that permit people that are 18, but obviously you can't have a drink until you're 21.
Right.
You can take your clothes off, honey, but you can't have a drink.
Well, I know that still blows my mind.
Well, fuck, it's the same thing. Like, oh, you can own a gun, but like
Yeah.
you can't have a drink until you're 21.
Exactly. You know,
So-
or you can perform the MMA and, you know, beat each other's heads in, but you can't have a drink while you do it, you know?
So true. Yeah. So I met this person, and then I started getting involved in the scene. And then I took my first ever burlesque class. And then at the end of it, there was a student showcase. And then I did my first ever performance in the upstairs cabaret venue of Cafe Cleopatra.
Right.
And
Famous Montreal venue.
fuck yeah,
Yeah.
it's a heritage site. So
Yeah.
many people have tried to buy it out, knock it down, build condos, but it's like so fucking like famously placed in the old red light district of
Yeah.
Montreal. Like it's literally a heritage building in Montreal.
For people
So,
who
like,
don't know, that's on Saint Laurent Street, just below St. Catherine.
Exactly. And the downstairs is still a strip club.
Oh, really?
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the first strip club I ever went to. Yeah.
Nice. Wait, that is where I said it was, right? That was I right on that?
Yeah,
Okay, 'cause I was
it's
thinking
right
another
across
place
the
too.
street from Club Soda
Yeah, exactly.
and the
yeah.
Montreal Pool Room, which is
They do
yeah.
all kinds of things at that venue as well, right? Because I know at Pooza Fest, it's now one
yep.
of the venues, and I saw a great show there. It was a ska band from the States called Be Like Max, and the place was packed and it was hopping
Yeah.
and it was fantastic. But it's beautiful.
Oh,
building.
it's absolutely beautiful. And so, like it being a heritage site, there's actually like the government protects that building. Like it can't get knocked down. So
Yeah.
I think that's pretty wonderful.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I had my first show there, and then from there
Wow.
I just like started performing regularly at the Wiggle Room, and I've been doing burlesque for 6 years now, and I literally can't imagine my life without it. Like it's really, every time I take to the stage, it's a cathartic experience. Like I could be having a perfectly grade A horrible day, and then like I go on stage, I fucking rip my clothes off, and it's like I'm peeling away all these like oppressive layers that have been tacked onto me throughout my entire life, and it's just like a beautiful rock and roll spiritual experience.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you what does burlesque bring to you?
Yeah.
Obviously if you do it, it's because you feel well doing
Yeah,
it. And I'm
absolutely.
sure as much as you give to burlesque, I'm pretty positive it gives back to you as well.
It does, yeah.
know.
And not just like from my performances, but like the like-minded, passionate people that I meet. It's really unique in the sense that it's this kind of like multidisciplinary world where so many of us come into it with like a background, whether it be in theater, in music, in dancing, or all the above, or even just like fashion styling or costume making.
Because isn't that a huge part of it as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, okay, you perform, I don't know how, on average, let's say in a month, how many times do you think you perform?
About 7 times a month, yeah.
Which is quite a lot. Now,
Yeah.
does that mean you need 7 different costumes a month?
No, so the thing is, I have like a repertoire of my signature acts,
Right.
quote unquote signature acts that I perform many times over, because those are like my strong, constructed, like well rehearsed,
Yeah.
extravagant
it's your
costume
set,
acts. Exactly,
right?
exactly, yeah. And it's crazy because like people don't, like if you're just an audience member that doesn't do burlesque and you see me do one of these acts, like you have no idea the infinite amount of hours that have gone into this like
Right.
5 to 6 minute piece, right? Like you build the thing, but then like your costume is also your choreography. So like, there's going to be things that fuck up. Like you're trying to like take off your dress and you like something snags and like
Right.
you're like, fuck, well, like I have to fix this. Like, and that's just a small little example of like how much work, like the work is never over essentially. There's always things that you can fine tune. There's always things that you want to fix. And because like these are your signature acts, you're going to get fucking tired of them, right?
Right.
It's like
Well, this becomes a creative part of it as well,
Yeah,
right? How do
like-
you keep yourself motivated?
Exactly. Like, think about the Ramones and how fucking tired they must have been a bit of, like, playing 53rd and 3rd. Like,
Yeah, man.
you know? Like,
As a musician, I get that. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes, you get in a band, it's like you have your regular set. If you're on tour, especially, but every once in a while, it's like, oh, let's throw this in, let's take this out. You got to mix it up, just to
Yeah.
keep yourself interested, because the more interested you're going to be, obviously your show is going to be more interesting as well, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
You're going to give more to it.
yeah. The more motivated you're going to be to present that work, and, like, if your audience can sense that you actually feel and you believe in what you're doing and what you're conveying on stage, fuck yeah, then you're going to connect more with your audience. And, like, to me, that's everything.
Absolutely. Well, what is the audience that comes? Okay, you talked about Wiggle Room. I know you've played in all, played. Sorry, this is the musician in me popping out.
Oh,
here.
no, it's okay. I get that all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're doing shows, in many different places, and we will get to that later on.
Totally.
As well. But what is the audience like? Because a lot of people, I'm sure, there's probably a percentage of people out there that might want to go, but have been hesitant for whatever reason. It's kind of like, all the girls that want to go to a strip bar, but are maybe nervous too, and guys as well, for that matter, or whoever it
Yeah.
is. But what is the audience like?
So it's really funny that you bring that up, because, like, as I was saying before, in terms of, like, burlesque being a working class, like, mode of entertainment. So traditionally back then it would be a lot of, like, working class males going to these shows.
Right.
But nowadays I would argue it's like a 60 to 40 female to male ratio. Like,
I knew it. That's
Yeah.
why I was asking.
Yeah. And, like, the amount of women that come up to me after the show and are like, fuck, this was, like, mind blowing. Like, this really speaks to me. How do I get involved? And I'm
Right.
like, well, you can come take a class, like, with me, or, like,
Oh, you teach as well?
I do teach as
Oh,
well.
all right.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that too.
Yeah. I'm like, take a class, go see more shows, learn, like, and get involved. Like, we have such an amazing scene and community here.
Yeah.
Like, one of the most like, kind of welcoming and wholesome communities that I've had, like, the great pleasure of experiencing, really. Like, there's not many problems that arise in the scene, and I think that's beautiful, really.
Absolutely. Well, talked about scenes and traveling stuff. We're in Montreal right now, and you do obviously a lot of shows in Montreal.
Yeah.
But you've been on the move as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you go across Canada, or other countries even?
Yeah, when you're a traveling musician or
Yeah.
artist or anything, like, you need a fucking place to stay.
Absolutely.
Like, anybody that thinks it's all glitz and glamour, they are, like, strongly mistaken.
At least you're not 5 having to sleep in a 1-bedroom hotel, right?
Yeah, but babe, punk rock, right?
Well, that's right. Absolutely. Oh my God, years of that. And cheers to that as well.
Cheers to that.
Right? Now, so you got, access, and you were able to see all these different scenes. How do you rate the Montreal scene compared to all the other scenes?
Well, I love Montreal so much. I would give
Okay,
it.
so we got it. You're biased.
Yeah, I mean, like, but also, like, these are all my friends, right?
Right.
So I would rate it a solid. I would rate it a solid 9 out of 10, because the pay rate is, like, better than a lot of different cities that I've seen.
Okay.
And also just because everybody's so welcoming, and, like, there's
Oh, hello, Chai.
there's, like, not a whole lot of drama and cattiness in the scene, which is excellent, because, like, in this kind of industry, like, there's room for competitiveness and
Right.
cattiness and bitterness and resentment, right? Like in any fucking
Absolutely.
field, right?
Absolutely. But I was wondering about that as well. Like, are the performers, are they supporting each other? Or do they like it when somebody kind of messes up so that they can appear better?
We are supportive of each other. And I think, like, that's so important for a strong community to thrive, not just, like, individually, but as a whole.
Right.
And also, yeah, the only reason why I would rate it a 9 out of 10 and not a solid 10 out of 10 is because, like, even though we are super, like, we want to be diverse and we want to be inclusive, and, like, especially for me when I'm producing shows and I'm, like, the one curating a given show, like, I want there to be, like, a diverse cast, not
Yeah.
just, like, all female, white, like, typically, like, beauty standards abiding bodies on my stage. Like, to me, that's not what burlesque is about.
Right.
If you want to go to a fucking strip club, like, you can.
Do you think that there's a percentage of the crowd that shows up and kind of like, you know, I'll use the typical, like, you know, the jockorama types, you know, that show up. It's like, we're coming for strippers, but it's burlesque, you know?
Oh, I've definitely experienced that. But like, you know, they either like fall in love with burlesque as this new entity that they didn't like, that they had this misconception about. And then they, you know, they saw it, they
You're
came.
getting all the love here.
It's amazing. They came, they saw, they fell in love with the art form, or they leave.
Right.
And like, that's fine. Like, it's, you know, if you are coming and expecting a strip club and that's not what you bargain for, like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I love strip clubs. Both worlds are fine for me, but like,
Yeah.
this one is different. And if you're not expecting that, then like, okay, cool, but like, don't be a fucking asshole about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
if she's bugging you, can put her down. She'll never stop.
I love her.
Yeah.
She's so sweet.
The animals are very involved in this show, by the way. Django's always trying to steal the show, and Chai, as soon as he gets attention, well, she comes, right? It's pretty much how it works around here.
They're so sweet.
Yeah. Burlesque isn't full on nude.
No. We always have to wear at least pasties and a
Okay.
G-string.
Right.
Yeah. Some people wear a Merkin, and that's like
What's that?
It's kind of like a sexy pad that you glue to your vagina.
A Merkin. See, I'm learning shit today. I love this. I got to go get me a Merkin.
Yeah, except you would need to get a special one that could contain your package.
Right.
It's not just like a...
Yeah. You know, there's something about strength that I want to touch on. I don't know, like, you know, maybe there's listeners or viewers out there that, you know, may have been just purely just on a stage before. But, you know, I think revealing your physical body and not just your, you know, ability that you're showing on a stage, it comes with something.
Oh,
you know?
definitely.
Like, I remember we just did a show for Halloween, and we didn't bring costumes. We were like, wow, what are we going to do? All right, we're going to do Cayman and the Strippers, you know, go out in our underwear. But I mean, like, whether you're, you know, well with your body or not, once it's starting and you're already almost naked or naked, I mean, there's nowhere to go from there, right? No. And I even, you know, me being a man that, you know, may even, you know, not always be 100% comfortable with my body or whatever, I did notice that after a couple of minutes, like, you let it go. You know, you have no choice almost.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, you know, you continue, show goes on and stuff. Then after a while, it's like, I do believe there's a certain, here, Chai, you're blocking the camera though now. There is a certain, you know, liberty, strength, or whatever you want to call it.
I mean,
there's
it's
definitely something that
so,
goes on.
It's so vulnerable, and there's so much beauty to be had in vulnerability. I believe, you know, like, so often we're not. I mean, in society, we're told you have to wear clothes,
right?
And like, you know, if you show too much emotion, like, maybe you'll be characterized as weak or too sensitive. But like, I believe that, like, showing your truest form, you're fucking naked,
right? You're coming into the world that way.
Yeah, and like, it's this really vulnerable position, but it's so, like, it's actually really strong to be in that position, and it's beautiful, and it's also really fucking political. Yeah. So
I'm realizing that more and more. Like, I've done shows with some burlesque performers in the past as well, and it's a subject that comes up a lot. Like, I love the way that it's become this liberating, powerful, I am woman, you're not going to tell me how to live, you're not going to put rules or restrictions on me, and I'm going to do what I want. I feel a lot of that type of energy. I'm sure other people could probably articulate that better, but that's what came across to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? And also, like, it's important to factor in, like, men do burlesque too, you know?
Oh,
like,
I didn't even think of that.
People that identify as men do burlesque, like trans people do burlesque,
right?
Gender non-conforming people do burlesque. So it's like, it's how you subvert these, like, traditional notions of gender or, like, sexual orientation.
Right.
Like, burlesque is really this, like, open field in which you can, like, convey whatever message you want to convey, or just kind of express yourself the way that you truly feel that you need to express yourself, like how you are as a person, not what fucking society slapped on you and said that like, you're a woman, like, you need to act this way, or like.
See, I've always been attracted to powerful people, powerful women in my life. I think it was a part of it being brought up by a single mom as well. But I've always, it's like, girls are like, you know, rawr, We're so taught, especially like, I grew up in the country, hockey players, farming, nothing wrong with anything like that. But
Yeah.
like often, especially like growing up through the 80s and stuff, it just wasn't like that. It was like guys were over here, the typical high school dances, boys on one side, girls on the other,
Definitely, for
and all
sure.
this. But, basically you're an entrepreneur. You are your own boss.
I am.
You are a business,
I
right?
am, yeah.
And there's something just so powerful about that not only is that attractive, but it's just so fun to see that. I think more and more people these days are becoming, whether it's in burlesque or not, or in other fields, but I find there's more, self-made people these days, that are thinking outside the box. They might not want to work 9 to 5 for somebody else, but trying to figure out ways to, be their own business. And there's
Yeah.
something about that I'm really attracted to.
Honestly, me too. And
Yeah.
I think that's why, like, I'm so into partaking in this field. I just like the thought of working a 9 to 5 and like abiding by somebody else's rules and like,
Right.
being polite for the sake of being polite, even
How
if
punk rock is that? Fuck yeah,
that
man.
shit. And like, yeah, there's something to be told there. Like, yeah, I fucking grew up on punk rock. I'm a punk rock ass fucking bitch, and like, I'm not gonna play by the rules. Like,
Yeah.
why should I? I'm fucking angry. I'm,
that's
like,
it, eh?
I'm pissed off every day.
On days that you are angry, walking on stage versus walking off, what happens there? What's the change in feeling?
It's catharsis. Absolute catharsis. It's
Yeah.
really a spiritual experience in which I get to go on there. I own the stage. I connect with my audience. I make them feel, and that's like extremely gratifying.
Yeah.
And I also I evoke my own emotion in that process. And it's really this incredible release. It's almost intangible. Like, it's just a complete energy shift. And I just feel so much better. Like, every time I take to the stage, I'm like, yes, this is where I need to be right now.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine it being any other way.
Fantastic. We were talking about costumes and stuff. Like, I mean, people that are into burlesque, they need to find these costumes. But I also have a feeling a lot of people make their costumes.
Oh, yeah.
Because is that part of it? Like, I mean,
Yep.
you need a bunch of skills. I mean, first of all, like, there's the physical side of this. I've seen some of the stuff you do. There is definitely a physical side to this,
Yeah.
Then there's the costume, the performance, the thinking of, what type of, especially when you're talking about almost like the theatrical aspect of it,
Yeah.
like telling a story in a short period of time and stuff. What are some of the ideas that you've come up with, and where do they come from?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just like going to the first part of your question, that's really where like the multidisciplinary aspect of burlesque comes into play. So, like, for
Right.
me personally, I brought in my background in dance training and in music.
Right.
So, like, it always starts for me with music. And then I kind of envision what character I'm going to kind of like portray,
Yeah.
what kind of story I want to evoke. Am I using props? How do these props pertain to the story that I'm going to convey? What are the costume pieces that make this character? And then to draw everything together, I create the choreography, which ties in all these different elements.
Right. So it's
So-
definitely multidisciplinary. let's say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, like, it never starts with the dance for me. It's always the music
Okay.
and then the feeling
Right.
and the character.
So what kind of characters do you do? Like, are we allowed to spill the beans on some of them?
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is all shit that you can find on my website anyhow. It's
You have
no
a website as
secret.
well?
Yes, I do.
What's the website called? Plug it.
It's SugarVixenBurlesque.com.
Check it out. Absolutely. Absolutely. But what kind of like characters have you maybe done in the past?
For sure. Okay, so in this past year, I actually I created an act on War Pigs by Black Sabbath. And yeah. Yeah, and it's called Enchantress, and the idea is that she's this really powerful witch, but she's in a codependent relationship with this prop snake, and it's this larger than life fucking huge boa constrictor like size snake.
Yeah.
And it's a reveal in and of itself, and the snake is attached to her dress, and then she like unravels her dress because the zipper is like a winding zipper, so it's like she's shedding her snake skin, and then she interacts with the snake, and then she the snake eats out her ass.
Naturally, like snakes do.
And then she decides that she doesn't need the snake to be powerful. She's powerful enough on her own. So she ditches it, and then it just ends in this like really erotic stripper floor work section, and then it just explodes.
If anybody listening to this right now does not want to go see that, I don't really want to hang out with you. but see, okay. Obviously, they're short stories, basically, just because of time limit of songs.
And they're like oftentimes they're dramatic, like they're like little telenovelas. Honestly.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
And, okay, so do you make your own like props or costumes? Like, what's that?
A lot of the
like?
stuff I do, but the stuff that I'm not, the stuff that I'm not skilled enough to make, I have my friends make.
Yeah.
So that's like also this really amazing aspect of community. It's like. Whatever I can't do myself, I ask my friends to do it, and I pay them because that's what friends do. We support each other.
Absolutely.
So like a lot of my undergarments I make myself, like my pasties, my Gstrings, my bras, etc. But then like the larger stuff like gowns and capes and prop snakes, I have my wonderfully talented friends to do that.
Look at all the skills we need here so far. Dancing, right? Like and strength, bravery, right? Yeah, you got to get past some things. We're talking about seamstressy stuff. What's the word I'm looking for here? You have to be able to make costumes, basically have this creative style, as well, and be able to be, capture an audience.
Yeah,
hold
stage presence.
There's so much into this.
Yeah.
It's wild.
But also, like, I do my own hair and makeup.
Right? Okay, there's another one.
Like I have to do all these things myself, and also like when I go on tours, I'm my own booking manager. I book all my own shows. I book all my own accommodation. I like have to put the like puzzle pieces together to make sure that my flights and trains and buses all gel together, that it makes sense.
So you're a travel agent as well.
Yeah, like the work never ends, but it's worth it. It's gratifying to me.
Are you able to support yourself off this, or do you need like an outside job as well? Or?
So for the time being, I perform as well as teach. Eventually, one day, I hope to be able to just perform and teach. But unless you're like a superstar like Dita Von Teese, who like, she's like a fucking celebrity.
Right.
You kind of have to have a side hustle. So a lot of people. They'll make costumes on the side, or they'll teach on the side, or they'll strip on the side, or some people, actually a lot of people work a fucking 9-to-5 job on the side.
Like musicians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's, it's all about the hustle, and like we do it because we love it, but it's also like super gratifying.
See, I love people with that go-get-'em attitude though. You know what I mean? You do have to hustle. I mean, anybody that wants to, or feels the need to, I tend to say sometimes, create, perform, get out there. I mean, there's so much that comes along with it. I often tell people, I always, picked up a guitar at, age 14, 15, whatever, I started playing, had dreams of this. I didn't know that I'd have to be a t-shirt salesman on the side, but all these things come with it.
Well, and it all kind of falls into place, right? Because like at the time you had no idea what the fuck you were signing up for.
Right.
But like sometimes you just kind of have to be thrown into the juice to like actually get that experience under your belt.
Sink or swim, right? And you are swimming. I see your name popping up everywhere.
Oh,
really, and it's amazing every time I see it. I'm like, yay, girl's doing it. She's out there, and because like, I the whole feeling, like how you talk about encouraging and supporting your friends and stuff like that. For me, there is that aspect, but it's also all of it in the sense like, you're also working with the clubs that put on the shows.
Yeah.
If the clubs are closing down, you're not going to have a place to do the shows as well.
Exactly.
It's why often like when you hear bands come in to a venue and then like they're dissing the venue and stuff like that. I'm like, no, man, those are your people. You need them as well. Like whenever we close up at night and doing finance, I'm like, what, did the bar do all right as well? You know what I mean? Because you're all working together. Exactly. It is one team.
Also, people that like diss the venue, why the fuck are you working there?
Right?
Why are you taking their money if you're just going to be a brat? Like that is absolutely unproductive, and you just look like a fucking two-faced son of a bitch.
That's
so,
it.
Like, don't do that.
You sound like you're speaking from experience here. You've witnessed this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have, for sure. Let me ask you, like, I mean, in society, you'll as much as I do think that society is opening and opening, more and more all the time, and I think a lot of people are, learning that burlesque is out there, and it's on a scale that seems to be growing a lot more
definitely.
these days. There will always still be,
stigma.
Absolutely that comes with it. And then, next thing you know, you have family stigma. You have friends that may not understand what it is you're all about. And that's a whole other thing that people, I think, are forced to deal with one way or another.
Definitely.
Was that ever, something that was difficult for you at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, like, luckily, so... Okay, my closest people to me are my dad and my sister, and luckily, and against all odds, really, my dad was fucking supportive from the get-go, which is amazing.
Way to go, Dad!
Yeah, way to go, Dad! So he won't come to my shows, but he's always been
I can understand that too, Dad.
yeah. He won't come to my shows, but he's always been super duper supportive, just on a day-to-day basis, and whenever he meets new people, he'll tell them about burlesque, and he'll be like, oh, go see my daughter.
Oh, wow.
Which is really fucking rad.
Yeah, it really is.
And maybe one day eventually he'll come to my shows. We're not there yet. I can appreciate that.
Yeah,
absolutely. My sister was also really supportive. It took my family one side of the family is cool with it now, but at first they kind of had this moment of oh my god, what is she doing?
Right.
And then they saw that I was good at it, and I was talented, and it was a creative process. It wasn't just this hypersexualization. But the other side of the family that's very traditionally Catholic, all baby boomer generation.
Right.
Think I'm the black sheep whore, which I can live with. Fuck them, I don't care.
That's the attitude. You need to have the attitude to go with it, right?
Yeah, I but fuck, I've been doing this for so long. Anybody that's oh, that's taboo, I'm really? What fucking planet am I on? At this point in time, if I was...
She's always wanting to get in on it.
Sweet kitty. At this point in time, I don't think anything about nudity. It's so natural to me.
Yeah,
it really doesn't mean anything.
Did it take a long time to get there, though?
Definitely.
Yeah.
My first ever performance, I was definitely intimidated. I definitely had a lot to drink.
You needed some lubricant. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
And even my first I would say my first year of stripping, I would needed liquid courage and whatnot, but that was only because I grew up in a society that told me that nudity was bad, right? It's been a personal process and journey with myself to understand that these codes and conventions are actually detrimental and poisonous, and they don't actually need to be there. And
do you think it's changing? Is it evolving, or is it staying the same? What's your views on that?
Okay, well, within burlesque, I think that there's definitely been a surge of it within the last few years. I think a lot of it had to do in part because of this is gonna sound really kind of weird. There was a Great Gatsby film remake, and that started a revival of a lot of corporate office parties wanting to have 1920s themed parties for Christmas and all these other holidays, right? So 1920s burlesque.
Right.
So there was a 2-year period in which I was doing a huge influx of corporate gigs for burlesque, and that was awesome because corporate gigs pay better.
Mucho dinero, yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that was great, and I feel now we're kind of just in a plateau where burlesque is yes, it's seen, it's respected, it's more or less understood.
Yeah.
And I'm really appreciative.
Wily cat. Whoa.
Woo!
Wily cat.
And I'm always super appreciative of that. And they'll be oh, well, do you have a degree? And I'm yeah. And they're what's your degree in? And I'm women's studies. And they're oh, cool. I get it.
That's good. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. Yeah. But see, again, we come back to strength.
Yeah.
Right? And where did you study women's studies?
Concordia.
That was at Concordia.
At the Simone de Beauvoir Institute.
And this is before you got involved with burlesque? During, okay.
During,
cool.
baby. I mean, I started doing burlesque freshly out of college, out of CEGEP.
Right.
Because we're in
Well, you
we're
were
in-
young. You're
we're in
18,
Quebec.
That's right. Yes.
So freshly out of CEGEP, and then it hasn't stopped since then. So I actually went away to Vancouver, and over there, the program is called Gender, Race, Sexuality, and Social Justice, which
Okay.
is more like a descriptive title, and I actually
Right.
appreciate that.
Okay.
The term women's studies is actually quite outdated. It's from the 70s when the program was initially developed.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Concordia is one of the oldest women's studies programs in all of Canada.
Oh, really?
Fun
Way to go,
fact.
Concordia.
And the
Yeah.
Simone de Beauvoir Institute is in a building that used to be a brothel.
No. What a coincidence.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, there's so much history involved in this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can pull out old cliches. What it like? What it was? Prostitution's the oldest business.
The oldest profession
right.
in history.
Exactly. You know, and we're talking about half the population. We're talking about women. You know,
Yeah.
it always kind of like sometimes it kind of freaks me out. Like, you know how we're talking women's studies. Okay, we're talking about the study of half the population.
Yeah.
You know, it's very broad as well,
Yeah.
especially these days since there's more and more discovery or public knowledge, I'd like to say, you know,
Yeah.
of different gender situations
Exactly.
or,
So
or
that's
realities,
Yeah,
you know?
that's why that's why the term for that field is really quite outdated, because I mean, especially now with the types of like feminism that we deal with, it's just intersecting issues, right? That can
Right.
encompass gender, race, sexual orientation, issues of disability, of ageism, of religion. Like, it's, you know, like when I was taking my courses, I was studying heavily like Indigenous people's rights, right?
Right.
Because of like, you know, hundreds of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada.
Absolutely. Isn't there a whole highway just like, you know, famous for that?
The Highway of Tears.
That,
yeah.
that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That's been well documented as well. I don't know
Now,
any
yeah.
numbers or
But,
anything like
like,
that, but it's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, you know, not even that long ago, fucking Stephen Harper refused to see it as a global crisis.
Yeah.
Even
That guy's a douche.
Yep, fuck him.
I don't like that guy.
But even like Justin Trudeau, there was an inquiry with missing and murdered Indigenous women, and there was a case that was submitted, and he refused to call it a genocide.
Really?
He just wouldn't do it.
Was he asked to call it a genocide? Like, I'm just trying to understand what the context was of it.
Yeah, so they presented the case to him, and and the case was essentially like, these are our findings. This
Right.
is a genocide within Canada, and he just would not.
What is the definition of genocide? Do you like I don't have it on me. I
don't
you know,
have
this
it
is
on me
caveman don't
either.
know shit, so I'm not perfect here, you know, by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm definitely curious to see if the definition fits this situation.
I guess that's fair, but
You know?
it's just like, fuck. Like, this is such a serious issue, and I
Absolutely.
feel like the least somebody can do is just to, you know, give some compassion to the families that have been directly affected, and be like, yeah, call it what it is.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely.
So,
You know, it's incredible. I mean, you know, we're first of all, I mean, just, you know, like we were saying, women, half the population, mothers, children, daughters. You know what I mean? Like, anybody that's not backing our women, I just don't fucking understand.
Yeah,
you know,
I
we're
agree.
talking about our mothers and our daughters.
Yeah.
That's who women are. You know, I mean, obviously they're much more than that. But, you know, when you're, you know, born, or you're a 5-year-old, you know, it's your sisters. These are the women in our society. Like, who the hell doesn't want to back this as much as possible? You know, I
Yeah.
just don't get it. You know,
No.
and you hear like so many people, you know, and I mean, you know, guys will be guys and hang out and, you know, talk shit. Same way girls talking shit about dick too and stuff like that. You know, people will say things, you know, in jest and humor or whatever it is. But when it comes down to a serious talk or whatever like that, I just can't understand anybody that wouldn't support the women, you know, around them, or the
Yeah.
women they don't know because of somebody else's. You know what I mean? It's just it seems so basic to me. You know?
Oh, it absolutely is basic. Yeah. I mean, but that's like what I grapple with, and honestly, that's a huge part of why I do what I do. Like the work isn't done, you know.
Far from it, right?
The work is not over.
Yeah.
So like, you know, am I ever gonna hang up my G-string? Like,
Hell no.
maybe when fucking patriarchy ends, but that's not happening anytime soon.
No, it is. I have a very close friend by the name of Lucy Rust from Winnipeg. I don't know if you've met or not, but when I speak with her, she reminds me of you on the political side of things.
Yeah.
And that, these subjects come up a lot in discussion.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, maybe there's a lot of women that are into burlesque that have, strong feelings towards gender issues, women.
Oh, definitely. I mean, neo-burlesque in like its current form, I would argue that it's a feminist art form. I don't think that it necessarily has... I don't think we can necessarily call it an intersectional art form because like we're still not in a place of like where the diversity is like very apparent, like you can in some instances see like still all white female casts and they're like thin and female presenting and that like yeah, okay, but like I want to see more diversity,
but that's
like on a global scale.
In burlesque also, like I tend to think that there was not just more open compared to strippers, but like, isn't there a whole thing about like there's a lot of larger women in burlesque as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's, traditionally, but even who are some of the forerunners? Like I'm thinking, what's her name? Betty, is it Betty Page?
Betty Page.
Right.
So she's a pinup model.
Okay.
Not traditionally burlesque, but she did do some videos with Tempest Storm.
See, that's what I saw.
Yeah. So Tempest Storm is actually a burlesque legend. She's still alive. She's still performing, and she's in her 80s.
There we go.
Yeah,
yes.
fucking fantastic. So like, going back to the question of age, like, we have burlesque legends that are still alive that are the pioneers of...
Do they show up at shows?
Yeah, well, so every year there's a huge event in Las Vegas called the Burlesque Hall of Fame Weekender, and it's essentially a fundraiser for the Burlesque Museum, the only burlesque museum in the world, which is in Las Vegas, Nevada. And
two things I'm surprised. Well, first of all, I'm not surprised that if there is only one, it's, there.
Yeah.
But I am surprised there's not more.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's like a 4-day thing, and one night is absolutely dedicated to the legends, and a lot of them still perform.
Oh, wow.
And it's just incredible. Like, they have more experience with taking their clothes off and their fingernail than like anybody else in the whole fucking Weekender.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's just absolutely inspiring.
Have you
to
performed
see that.
there before?
No,
not
but
yet. You went to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that like one of the bucket list events?
Definitely. It's like the Oscars of burlesque.
I'm sure you'll be there.
Oh, I will.
Absolutely.
Then. Don't you worry.
See, go get them, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. I did have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
One was the physical aspect of it. Like, first of all, the hours is one thing that, for some are probably pretty difficult. It's kind of like bartending hours, I imagine, right?
Oh, God.
Right. We're talking late nights. But you mix that with the whole physical side of things. You know what I mean? Because, yes, you trained as a dancer. Maybe a lot of others did. I don't really know. You know what I mean? But, I mean, when I saw some videos of you working, I mean, you're not just going through the paces. You're giving it all. And it looks like, I'm like, man, if I did 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 1 minute of that, I'd be like dying, huffing and puffing and stuff. Like, I mean, there must be like training involved. Like, how do you prepare before you get on stage? I'm talking, when I say that, that's kind of a two-part question because there's the long term before you get on stage and the 10 seconds before you get on stage part of this question.
Definitely. So like, on a day-to-day basis, I train. Like, I go into the studio, I rehearse, like think about like a musician and their band having to jam every week, multiple times a week. I have to do that too. Before getting on stage, I always stretch, I warm up. I have different kind of like mental exercises that I do where I like breathe. I like get into like a happy, comfortable place. I'll listen to music. I'll smoke cigarettes. I'll have a shot of tequila.
Whatever
like,
it is.
Just my personal rituals, right? So it's just kind of like, it comes with time. It comes with experience. But like I have certain methods that work for me, and like definitely just keeping my body in constant motion and just always kind of rehearsing and training, taking dance classes here and there. I teach, so I'm always just kind of like, I'm moving like 5 out of 7 days of the week.
Right. Yeah, because like I know like sometimes if I get on stage, I learned really quickly that because our music's pretty fast, so right from the get-go, and I'm
Yeah.
singing, right, while I'm moving and, doing what it is I
Cardio,
do.
baby.
But that's it. If I don't, like, warm up, even if it's, like, a minute before there, I can notice difference because then I'll be huffing and puffing through the first few lines of music until I kind of get my cardio going. But, like,
Yeah.
when you come out, I'm pretty sure that, like, depending on what the show is, I'm sure you have all kinds of different styles, but, like, sometimes it must be like, bang, you're on,
Oh, when you're on, you're on.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you have to warm up, like, physically a lot, like, before you get on there? Or do you have, like, when you're talking about the routine, I'm thinking, like, you're talking about stretching. Like, for me personally, sometimes I have to jog in place for a minute and get the cardio up, so when I go on, it's not hitting me right away.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely there's exercises like that come into play. Like before I take to the stage for a competition, I'm definitely doing like a 30-minute exercise.
That's it, yeah.
To just like get my body warmed up so that when I do some of the more acrobatic shit that I do on stage, I'm not pulling something and
Right.
injuring myself.
Well, exactly.
Because like my body is my work vehicle. Like if like I don't have benefits, I don't have like coverage. Like if I can't work, I don't get any money.
You just brought up a huge thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, this isn't, when I'm saying you're an entrepreneur, you're, the boss of your body, and you place yourself wherever you want to be placed in this society
Yeah.
to as a job, but there are no insurances
No.
and benefits. But do people ever talk about things like that? Like, is there a way to get benefits and insurance and stuff like this? Like, do people look into this?
I mean, we talk about it amongst ourselves, like because burlesque is like still like niche, kind of quote unquote lowbrow art,
Right.
Traditionally, like there's no way that we can kind of like start a union,
Right.
unless like the Burlesque Hall of Fame Museum, like grows and then like starts employing people. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that's a fucking huge process.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, there should be something. Like, I mean, like, I guess it comes probably like even outside of burlesque. But I mean,
Yeah.
for people that do work on their own, maybe there's a way of getting private insurance and stuff like that.
That's kind of what you have to do. You know?
Because like if you go down, you break a leg, you're not working for a little bit. Mind you, I have a feeling you'd still figure out a way to work it into your show.
Well, that, but also just like paying the bills,
But
right?
that's
so,
it, yeah.
so that's why I have to be smart, and that's why I always kind of just like make sure that everything's in order, so if I do need like an emergency fund, I'm safe. I'm not fucked.
Well,
you know?
exactly, yeah.
Because I've chosen this life, but I've also chosen the responsibilities that come with this life. So,
What I like about your path is, how you got in and the age you did.
So young.
Well, so young, but you seem to have come in with support, with a background before, with a clear idea, or
Yeah.
a clear-ish. It probably even changes and evolves as you
It has
you go,
it has evolved, matured, and developed and grown over time.
Right.
And, I like the more that I kind of go through life. It's a huge part of it. So I'm
Yeah.
super thankful for that, for sure.
Absolutely. So listen, we've been talking for a while, and what do you have coming up? Like I you have all this history, but like, what is coming up for you? Like, what you got going on?
So for me coming up, I'm going to be producing a show on March 21st. It's called Rock and Roll Babeland, and it's going to be happening at the Wiggle Room.
Right?
And
Here in
it's-
Montreal?
Yes, here in Montreal. It's a fucking rock and roll burlesque themed show, and it's just a huge party. There's go-go dancing.
Sounds wild.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And then soon thereafter, I'm going to be taking off to Panama to compete.
What?
Yeah, to compete there. Panama.
Right? I need to see back. Like, there's competition. You just brought up something else here. That there is competition in this as well, right?
Competition, honey. Yeah. I mean, I spent a month and a half in Europe this past fall, and I just like banged out a series of competitions, and I actually won a couple of crowns, which I'm quite proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that competitive aspect. But like at the end of the day, if you don't take yourself like too seriously,
Yeah.
and you like have fun no matter what you do, and you don't let yourself get too down and too defeated, like that's the best and healthiest kind of frame of mind to have.
Absolutely. What would you tell 18-year-old you? I won't say another person, but 18-year-old you. What would you tell 18-year-old you? That is, that first thought of, I think I want to do this.
Buckle up, bitch.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a ride. I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's wild because, like, you know, like the reason I say that because, you know, some young people, I do think they look up to strong women as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, they might be like, hey, I want that lifestyle. And I'm sure it's great for some people, but I'm sure it's the type of lifestyle that's probably not great for everybody. Same way I wouldn't tell everybody to live my lifestyle.
Definitely.
Either, you know what
I mean, tons of people that I started doing burlesque with actually, or were in the scene when I entered it
right
many years ago, they don't do burlesque anymore.
Really? Yeah?
That's a common thing. Like there's this kind of point in time that it's honestly, it's like the burlesque crossroads. Okay.
Right.
Going down to the crossroads. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's like,
make a deal with the devil.
Yeah. You either make the choice like, I want to make a career move out of this, or you decide that you've kind of coasted and like it's been fun while it's lasted, but you can't really sustain this. Yeah, and then you kind of just like stop and you move on to other stuff, or you dedicate your life more seriously to your career, whatever it may be.
For sure. Do you like the whole teaching aspect to it?
Yeah. Teaching is awesome. It's actually super gratifying. The only thing is like it takes a lot of preparation, and like teaching is like a whole other animal where like you have to like be on and like you have to make sure that you're explaining things in a very concise and like understandable way. And if my students have questions, I'm like, okay, yeah, fuck, like, let's go back into that, and like, I better fucking explain myself clearly.
Yeah.
So anyway, like,
like well, for sure, it's a total different thing. I mean, just the act of teaching, no matter what the subject is a thing in itself as well, right? You have to be
so present, right? I mean, you have to be present when you're on stage, but this is like a different kind of presence. Yeah. So I love it, and like, I love making my students laugh. So I like definitely love encompassing like jokes and like just like different approaches to make myself seem like more personable and approachable. Because
you have no problem with that, I'm sure, right? But I mean, you have a gift. I don't know if you had this before you started burlesque, or you had it, you know, it developed as, you know, as you found yourself and through burlesque and stuff. But like you do come across as somebody that's very confident, you know, who articulates very well, can explain, you know, different facets of life or whatever it is, whatever you're studying. But like, do you think you were like that before, just as a human being naturally, or is it something that developed a lot, you know, through this process of like, because technically, I tend to think anything with your path that you've chosen, you're building confidence through it, right?
Definitely. Absolutely. I think it's definitely been a process. I would say that I've always been a fighter just because of like my history in my life. But that's definitely something that's like I've been able to take that aspect and fine tune it and kind of like use it within this medium, within this field that I'm in, which is pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to say cheers.
Cheers.
And I want to say thank you for coming by the podcast and hanging out with me today. And K-Man learned some shit today.
Fuck
cheers
yeah,
to you,
you did. Rock and roll.
You are awesome.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Say bye, Django. All right, peace out, everybody. And what a guest I had today. I've been wanting to sit down with this lady it's been months since we talked about it. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get some news. So if you are in Montreal, check out the Wiggle Room. She's got shows coming up. And if ever you hear Jacki SugarVixen around town, go say hi. Tell her K-Man sent you. All right, peace out. Oh, K-Man don't know shit.